Welcome to the Wildflow podcast with me, Charlotte Puanto, certified cycle and feminine embodiment coach and shamanic womb guide. In this podcast, I'll share my wisdom and conversations with powerful change makers, thought leaders, and embodied teachers to invite you to live cyclically in flow with your menstrual cycle instead of fearing it, to heal menstrual shame and normalize womb wisdom and period positivity, and to step into your sovereign magnetic power to create and embody the change you desire to see in your world. Settle in to unleash your wild flow. Hello, loves. This is a bonus episode for you when I was a guest on Sophie French's Earth Within podcast. We had a beautiful, epic chat. Two menstrual cycle coaches getting very excited about their shared passions for our shared passions, I should say, for all things cyclical living and honoring the seasons and cycles. And also really, there's a lot of teaching in here, a lot of knowledge that we shared, looking at how the seasons and cycles interweave, how they overlap, and how you can play with them and really embody them in different realms of your life. So in your menstrual cycle awareness, in terms of how you care for yourself, your creativity, having a cyclical business as well. Just so much in there. I just loved this conversation, and I asked Sophie if she would do me the great honor of allowing me to share our whole conversation in one. You can find it also on the Earth Within podcast, broken into 3 chunks, so 3 smaller chunks, whereas this is the conversation all in one if you want to just sit down in a cozy space or listen on the go and just press play and tune in to our conversation, which was recorded in the last quarter of 2021. If you want to connect with Sophie, you can find her on Instagram. She is at Sophie French, and I'll pop her links in the show notes. And her podcast is the Earth Within podcast, which features all kinds of really gorgeous conversations about cyclical living and honoring the seasons and cycles within. Okay, happy listening. Much love.
Hello, welcome, beautiful Charlotte. So great to have you on the podcast. How are you today?
Oh, I'm really well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor, and I'm just so excited to talk to you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. I am so excited to dive into the realms of menstrual and moon cycle wisdom, everything that you embody and share, and that I'm learning from you, and we're dancing together in this sphere of leaning into cyclical rhythms that are all around us and within us. Those people with wombs, and obviously Mother Nature herself as well. So that is going to be the thread that we're going to move through over this episode. But first of all, for everybody listening that doesn't know you yet, I would love if you could introduce yourself and a little bit about perhaps where you are, a bit about you and what you're up to at the moment.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I'm Charlotte Puanto. I'm coming from the Southern Highlands, south of Sydney in Australia today. I'm from the UK originally, from Nottingham. I am mum to 3 little girls, and I'm a wild feminine cycle coach. So I absolutely love talking all things menstrual and moon cycles, particularly. I love guiding women to connect with their bodies and their cycles, like you say, within and without, with nature, and particularly to connect women with their own unique cycle experience, rather than looking at what kind of the archetypal or textbook cycle is. And instead, I find that lots of women want to kind of fit themselves into like the box, if you like, of like what the cycle should be and should look like and how it should feel at different points. And I love to help women to connect with their own cycle and see what their own true unique cycle experience is, and to work with that as well. So that's one of my passions. And I also am a menstrual educator for girls. So I created and hold and teach others to hold first moon circles, which are beautiful sacred circles for girls who are coming up to or have just started their first bleeds, so their menarche rite of passage, to help them to connect with what it is, what it's all about, what's going on in a really safe and sacred and nurturing space. So they're getting the full holistic, empowering information, not just what's going on at school or the playground or what they might have read in books or TikTok, as it seems to be. So yeah, that's the my other passion.
Amazing. Oh gosh, I just adore all of the above, all of the listed. And to expand on that, and I suppose to get to know you more, it's so beautiful to learn more about a personal journey of arrival to this space. And I wonder, has life always looked this way to you, leaning into wild feminine rhythms, both having a womb, and I know you said about not always being, or leaning into the textbook cycle or the archetypal. And so I'm sure that there's a journey there to expand on and to zoom into. If you'd like to take us through, what has it looked like for you on your journey of maybe arriving to this incredible space that you're in now? If you'd like to take us on that adventure, we'd love to go with you.
Yeah, sure. I'm just wondering how far back it starts. It's like from birth, right? And before. So I'll take you back to the time of my first bleed. I think it seems like a good place to start. So just very briefly, I think I was turning 12, that kind of age, and I was at my dad's house when I had my first bleed, and I knew what it was, but I had nothing with me. I didn't know it was coming. I didn't know what to look for, what the signs were before it happened, and I had no period care items at my dad's house, and I just felt like I couldn't ask him. So I was kind of mortified, and I have this sort of embodied memory. It's like an imprint of me kind of needing to go, and like hold myself together and be like, okay, you've got to take responsibility for yourself now. This is on you. Felt like I couldn't really go and ask for what I needed, I guess, in that moment. So I remember putting some toilet paper in my pants and kind of carrying on until I got home. And when I got home, I was given what I needed, and it was a happy little moment, which was nice. But I had really heavy bleeds, a lot of pain. I had to sleep on towels. I had skin that was it just broke out all the time. And I just remember thinking like, God, my period sucks. Like, I hate this so much. It just hurts. And my mum, told me that she had really similar experience. I think when I was 16, I was taken to the doctors to get the pill, because that's what she had done. And, I was sort of told that it would help regulate my cycle and clear up my skin and just kind of help, if you like. So I then went on the pill for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. And I remember thinking, this is great. I can hack my cycle. If I don't want a bleed, I don't have to have one. I'll just keep going with the pill. And I just felt kind of like I didn't have any hormonal ups and downs. But there was a year when I went backpacking. I went with my husband, he was my boyfriend at the time, we were living in England and we went backpacking, we came to Australia and we went to South America and we did all this, like we had this whole year of like, it was amazing. But I remember before I left the UK going to my doctor saying, I need a script for the pill for like a whole year. And she said, well, I think you should go on something else, try this different pill because it will help you, like it's better for you. Take this other one. But what happened was I spotted just all the time. I had anxiety. I felt really low. You know, I would call it depression. Looking back, I was so homesick. I was really anxious. I just didn't know myself. It was just awful. And so after like maybe a couple of months, I decided to stop taking that pill, and I just kind of went free range for the rest of the year. I just didn't take anything. But I don't really have a recollection of how that was for me, other than just thinking, as soon as I get back to England, I'm going to go and get the same pill that I knew before, and like it worked for me. It was fine. So I don't really recall much of that. But as soon as I got back, I went straight back on the pill and was on it for another 5 or 6 years. When I decided that I wanted to have a baby, or when I was first starting to kind of toy with the idea of it, I thought, well, I'm going to come off the pill. And when I did, it was like withdrawing from like a drug. Like I had these incredible waves of nausea, lightheadedness. I remember walking up a hill thinking I was going to faint. Like I had all these sensations all through my body, like particularly around my like womb space and abdomen, and basically every part of me felt like it was like, I thought I was pregnant. I kept thinking, I was like, am I pregnant? Is this what it's like to be pregnant? Because it kind of mirrored some of those symptoms of like early pregnancy, like nausea, like headaches, dizziness, like just all of these feelings. And so I'd be like doing all these tests going, am I pregnant? And it was no. And I was so confused. Looking back now, I can see that it was detoxing from years and years and years. But I was paying attention this time, whereas the first time I had gone off the pill for that year, I wasn't paying attention. So I had no idea to join any dots. I wasn't really, it's like just numb, just disconnected from my body. I had no sense of what I was feeling or what was going on, and certainly didn't think anything about, you know, that coming off a pill could do that. Whereas this time, because I was looking for signs and symptoms of potentially being pregnant, I was really aware of it. So fast forward a few years, I've since had 3 children. And if I haven't been pregnant, I've been breastfeeding, and often the two overlapped pretty much for the whole time. And in between kids, I've probably had like just a handful of cycles and bleeds. And they've been really irregular before I'd fall pregnant again. And it's only been in the last few months that my cycle has started to come back, and it's extremely irregular at the minute. So I think really it was after my second child was born, about that kind of time. I can't even remember how I came across it, but I remember by this time I'd stopped working in my day job. Or I was still there, but I was kind of trying to transition out a little bit, and I was like looking for something else. I was like, there's more life like than this. It just wasn't fulfilling me, and it certainly wasn't very supportive of having 2 kids. So I'd started to look for what was next. And I'd done some training as a youth mentor at that time. And I was really thinking about, you know, doing this other work that felt really nourishing. And, you know, I'd really connected with this as my background in these, you know, once I'd left uni and got like a real job, I've been working in education. And And so I really wanted to use these skills in a way that felt meaningful. And just had this desire, I think, after I'd had kids, to like really give back, or like heal this inner child part of me as well, and be this person that give to children what I'd kind of wished I'd had when I was growing up. So I think it was part of this, and I heard something about menstrual cycles, and it's like, what's all this about? And I bought this book, and it was called 4 Seasons in 4 Weeks by Suzanne Mathis McQueen. And it was like this book that outlined the inner world of your cycle as being more than just a bleed, and how it's a bit like having 4 seasons, you know, within each of these phases, and how it's mirrored in the natural world, and, you know, like an invitation to explore these and connect with these. And I was just like, what is this? So that really sowed a seed for me, you know, huge amount of interest. And as I became a coach and started working with women, menstrual cycle awareness just seemed to kept cropping up. Like my clients were bringing it to me going, you know, they were like, by this time, Wild Power, the book was out, and they were like, have you read this book, Wild Power? And I was like, no, what's this about? And, you know, we're having more and more conversations that were cycle based. So my world kind of, like, I was starting to incorporate cycle awareness, but then really explore it for myself. But I felt like because I didn't have a regular cycle, I couldn't really connect with it in the same way. So it became this thing that became a real like cognitive, like a theory based thing for me that I like started to learn heaps and heaps about. I was starting to really coach women on it. It came up all the time. You know, there was starting to use cycle awareness to underpin all the other work we were doing, which was about self-care or life goals or purpose or mothering or just being a woman. And cycle awareness kept coming underneath it all. But it was really, I was starting to feel a bit like, how can I talk about this when I don't have this experience? Like I've been on the pill for so long. I've not really had much time cycling naturally. So how can I talk about this? And so I started to look for other ways of connecting with the seasons and the cycles outside of the menstrual cycle. And for me, that really looked like starting to notice the moon and how the moon shifts, and it has these phases, this constant rhythm, but it changes within it. But that cycle is still quite predictable. And the natural seasons around me. And, you know, I grew up in England where we have 4 very clear, distinctive seasons. And, you know, even where I live now in Australia, we live somewhere where we have very clear, distinctive seasons. We get frost and, you know, snows nearby in winter, and summer it's, you know, boiling hot, as you can imagine. So just starting to connect and notice these seasons around me, and seeing how that was still being reflected in me, even though I wasn't having either any cycle at all or these kind of seemingly erratic cycles that haven't settled back down again. So really that's kind of the journey, I think, where I've got to today. And now I'm looking at, you know, working with my own cycle and supporting myself through kind of the unknowns. There's a lot of unknowns in it because it's not regular.
Thank you for sharing your journey with us on the podcast. It's so it's just so insightful. Everybody has their own journey with discovering, you know, the cycle within the menstrual cycle, and then the potential of connecting to other cycles. And I love how this has all come through for you and you know, been embodied. It sounds like there's this journey of like, you know, dissociation or disconnection towards connection and embodiment. Like, you know, it seems like there's a drift towards that interconnection of us with nature, of you with nature, and how that all actually begins to empower you, like those connection with emotions that you may be feeling, towards some different parts of the cycle, whether it's the moon cycle or like you say, if you're journeying with this more uncertain or unpredictable menstrual cycle, that there's actually this incredible tool in the moon. And I love how the moon is a feminine, energetic, like, what could you even call, like, she's just like a goddess. I just love the moon and the energy that she can bring through for, especially for women, or people with wombs, or that there's this very feminine power to her, and everything she offers like a reflection back to us of what's going on inside. And so I'd love to hear more about that anchoring into the moon cycle, and perhaps what does that even look like if someone isn't aware of the journey that you can take with the lunar cycle. Would you be able to explain a little bit about almost like to a beginner's mind of what does that even look like?
Yeah, what a great question. I hope I do it justice. Yeah, so the moon is, in the sky. We see her every day, and her cycle takes about 28 days, 29 days to complete the cycle, from new moon through to full moon and then back to new moon again. So within that, there's a pattern that in terms of her illumination, that changes a little bit every day by fractions, and but it's always the same pattern, it's always the same cycle. So although she changes every day, she's there's this real, like I say, predictability, if that's a word, to her. So that really mirrors us as cyclic beings ourselves. Whether you have a menstrual cycle or not, we still have this ingrained hormonal pattern that revolves around this this sort of monthly cycle. Can absolutely be longer or shorter, or doesn't have to be, like I said, the textbook 28, 29 day cycle, but we have this sort of shifting within us, and we are like the moon. We are not like the sun, which is pretty much the same every day. It rises and it falls, and it's on that 24-hour cycle. That's very masculine. That's really like how men's hormonal patterns work, and our culture absolutely wants us to operate like suns, like these daily cycle of productivity, of showing up the same, acting the same, being the same, the same output every day. And it doesn't honor the fact that we are moons and we have these shifts and changes. And sometimes we are more outward or have more energy, like how you might say the full moon. You talk about how the full moon's got like this really strong energy in it. Babies are born full moon, and children go a bit wild, and more people present to hospital at full moon, for example. And then this dark moon, this new moon, being this more inward energy. So we have that kind of inbuilt within us, and so you can look to the moon to just start observing and noticing where she rises on the horizon for you, because it will be pretty much the same in the same place every day, and the path she would take over the sky above and where she sets. But every day the moonrise gets a little bit later. It's approximately, give or take, an hour later every day. So where I live, I see the moon rise out of my lounge window, and at full moon, moonrise is around sunset. So in summer, the sky is still bright when the moon rises, but in winter it's absolutely dark. But it's always about the same kind of time. The full moon will rise, so it's really easy to notice the full moon because the sky is dark above. And at new moon, the moon is usually overhead in the middle of the day. So it's something that you can't really see so much. So in terms of connecting with the moon, each of these phases of the moon, so simplistically you can just look at new moon and full moon, or you can also look at the sort of quarter phases as well. So if it's a week from new moon, a week later you've got first quarter moon, which is the half moon, the waxing, which means getting bigger, growing in light, waxing moon. A week later you have full moon. A week later you have the third quarter, which is the half moon, waning moon. So the opposite half of the moon will be lit up and the moon is getting smaller. And another week until back to new moon, sorry. So you can just observe this growing light and then this growing dark. And it's like how in our bodies, and if you do have a menstrual cycle, your energy does exactly the same thing. Your energy starts off low when you have your bleed, and your energy rises and it peaks at the full moon of your cycle, which is ovulation, which is when your ovary releases the egg, ready for perhaps conception if that's going to occur, or if that's not happening, then it will be absorbed into your womb and then released with your next bleed. So full moon is like this peak energy. It's when your hormones are rising, it's when you're ovulating, you have this more outward energy, and like the full moon and the ovulation pulls you outwards. And then from that point, it's this descent, this increasing darkness, this being pulled back inwards again. As the dark increases in the moon cycle, your hormones and your energy levels decrease in your body. So in that way, it's beautifully mirrored. And you can also think of it in terms of the seasons of the year. It's like winter being dark, spring as the energy and light are rising, summer being the peak of brightness and outward energy and life in the natural world, through to autumn, which is getting darker again and coming back within until you get back to winter. So just in very simple terms, you can just observe these three cycles, really: the one in your body, the one with the moon, and the one with the annual seasons as well. It's just this perfect reflection of our feminine cycle.
Thank you so much for summarizing that in such a beautiful and integrative way, and layering it, because I like to think of it as a tapestry. We can just locate ourselves, our bodies, where we are in the world. I love how you describe where, the moon rises in your house. It's something that I often will, if I've just moved recently. And so I'm still like, okay, which window will it be?
Yeah.
So I love that. So we're grounding into our location in the world and the seasons and how they are around us. And we're just, can't you just feel the spring just in the air, in the as we emerge in Southern Hemisphere. And then there's the moon, of course, and then our womb and within our own body. So just bringing in all that that energetic container, because as a cyclical being, having that permission to be cyclical has been transformational for my life. I've, like you mentioned in your story too, and it's like this linear exponential trajectory we're almost like catapulted into. I feel like from birth it's like boom, okay, go, like just go, sort of don't stop. And then when you have this like cyclicality and you learn about your own inner rhythm and how you can move with them, I honestly have never felt so empowered or in my body, like just layering all of that. And so I think really I'm just illuminating, I suppose, that joy and that empowerment that can come, and also noticing all the parts, because when you're cyclical, you can have and everybody, I believe, is a cyclical being, like you mentioned, with the masculine hormonal cycle being akin to the circadian rhythm of the rise and setting of the sun. Everyone can lean into a rhythm of sorts, like you said, whether it's seasonal or lunar or menstrual. But it's almost like saying you are whole. Like, this is exactly as you're meant to be, whether you're tired and like totally just over it, and there's a day where that's happening, and then even a few hours later, as you go through the day, I feel a bit of inspiration in my body. It's the height of the day, it's lunchtime, or a week later, I'm a totally different person. I don't feel as creative as I did last week. Maybe my energy is waning. And so I think I'm just really summarizing and reflecting back that how great it is to feel whole as a human being, and to notice that there's that permission slip, I think, with cyclical living, and everything that you're inviting in your work is encouraging that, is empowering that, and just like how wonderful for like that gift of wholeness and that gift of permission, personally and collectively. So I can't help but think of the exercise that we've been doing recently in cycle coach training. I know that you completed that last year, and now you're a mentor, one of my mentors at the moment. And I'm thinking back to a wonderful session where we journeyed through a cycle wisdom map that was originally birthed through Jane Hardwick Collins. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then so Claire Baker, wonderful Claire Baker. If you don't know her, if you're tuning in, then definitely look her up, as she's obviously someone that both Charlotte and I have learned and been enriched by, in our experience with her and her teachings. But I'd love to, if you can also summarize that map and what we even spoke to, as we explored.
Yeah, I mean, I could be here all day talking about that because I just love that practice. I am completely obsessed with it. So I went with Claire to a workshop that Jane Hardwick Collins led, and it was what was it called? Autumn Woman, Harvest Queen, and it was about perimenopause and menopause wisdom, and but for women of all ages and stages as well, but really looking at this autumn season of our life. But during this workshop, she taught this this session on like the wisdom of all of the seasons and cycles within and without, and how they all overlay. And I think it's one of the things that she teaches most, because it's just to get this perspective of how all of these cycles overlay, connect, to identify similarities and also contrasts, was just so powerful. So it starts off with the 24-hour cycle, like you were just alluding to. So, how our energy and the activities we do vary across the 24 hours, how our body on a physiological level changes, how our and as women, we have circadian rhythms as well, not just men. So we have, our hormones pick up in the morning, that direct us to wake up and to get on with our day. And, in the morning, we start to eat and plan our day and get ready. And depending on you and your lifestyle and your season of life, that might look like having a lion and or might mean getting up in the morning and doing 5 a.m. practice, whatever. Or it might mean battling with, breakfast and getting kids ready and packing everyone in the car without tearing your hair out and bundling kids off to wherever they need to go and getting to work and commuting. So, how that's different to later on in the morning when we have, depending on, again, it all depends on what you're doing, but, the energy within us, our physiology is the same regardless of what our lifestyles are like. So, we have that focus, in the morning to do whatever it is we're doing. We have lunch. Some people have a post-lunch slump, as I've always called it. That sort of tiredness and that lull around 2-3 p.m. How we wrap up our day. We come home for dinner. Then it's the evening time, bedtime, sleep time. Just simply. So how we have that cycle. Then how we have the menstrual cycle that we've just talked about. So, with these 4 phases, from your bleed time and how that connects with, I always forget quite which time of day it is. I think, was that the 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. section? So like your bleed time, it's like a time of dreaming and resting and slow and being within, and how that's really mirrored by this 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. time of our day. Once we finish bleeding, we go into what's called the follicular phase. It's when our hormones start to pick up, the ovary in our body is starting to be ripened, our hormones are rising. It's like the time of new life and growth, and rising, which is like 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. And then we have the mid part of our cycle, which is the ovulation phase, when the egg is released. And it's, as I was saying, it's like this most outward energy of our whole cycle, and how that's like the middle of the day. And then how the premenstrual phase is like this darkening, this slowing, this coming back within, and that being, like this sort of evening time in the daily cycle. So, we've got this this real mirror of the day also mapping within in the menstrual cycle. And I've obviously talked about how the moon lines up as well. So you're starting to see how these cycles line up. We've got the year, as I was saying, these seasons. So that's another one to add on and layer on and see how they intersect. And then there's also the seasons of like the female life cycle that I like just love to work with as well. So, if you can maybe work out at home where these kind of overlap, that might be fun. So, that we start off at birth, and we have our childhood until we're about our childhood being like our early childhood, the time of learning and setting the foundations and discovering who we are and what our place in the world is. We have our teen years, which is all about kind of seeing who we are as an individual and what our place in the world is. So this is sort of 0 to 25 is like the maiden, the child and maiden time of our life. And so that's lined up with the inner spring. So the part of your cycle after you have finished bleeding. It's also like the growing moon, so the waxing moon. So these are all lining up. It's this sort of growing energy, basically. The next phase of our life is what's known as the mother season, and it doesn't mean necessarily about birthing children. It's about knowing who you are now and sharing that with the world, really. And so this is from age 25 to age 50, and it's really about creation. And so this is really lined up with the middle of the menstrual cycle. So this time of growth and blossoming and blooming and, like being in this peak, I guess, in terms of a energy and creation energy. Then after that, we've got...
I was just going to add that I remember in session, and I'm sure it's okay to just illuminate this, that with the mother archetype and season, it can also be known as, and you suggested this in our class, the creatress. And so if someone doesn't resonate with the idea of the mother phase, then creatress and that period of life being like that, the birthing and delivery of whether it's creative projects or business or children. So I think I just wanted to slip that in there before you move on to the gorgeous next archetypal.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I really love that. And I think something that I want to add to that as well is that, this mother season of life, or the creatress time, or this, this creative, this phase when we're birthing and creating and sharing of ourselves out into the world, culturally it's a time when we're really like the good woman and the good mother, like, gives of herself to others. And I think, it can be really powerful to think about how you can harness some of that for yourself as well, and not just, spill over into giving so much that you've got nothing left for yourself. Really savoring and exploring your creativity, and, what your magic, your medicine for the world is as well for you. I really love kind of subverting that mother archetype. So it's not just all about, birthing people and giving away and serving others. I think, mother is so undervalued anyway. It's also a really shamed kind of role, I think. Culturally, it's just not valued in the way that women as mothers do a lot of unpaid labor, carry, we're birthing the future of the world, but it's not respected. And I think that speaks to just this general attitude towards the nurturer, the carer, what it speaks to, what it means to be a good woman as well. And so I really love, not just for women who either don't have children or can't have children, but for all of us to see beyond the confines of this is a season for birthing people, and we can be more than that. We can explore that for ourselves, and we can, if I think it's so powerful to see that we can make of this season of life, and all seasons of life, what we want it to be, rather than just what we're kind of expected or what's valued, what we're worthy of being at this time.
That is so potent. I'm so glad this has come through. I feel like this is a very clear message for whoever is here with us. Tuning into that just divine like moment of this season of the mother can be the season of radical self-nurturance, radical self-compassion, and just really activating and empowering that role of the mother. Like it's making me emotional, because how the confined or defined it is by society, and how incredibly just like to reinvigorate the mother archetype. Like, what a big, huge just pop of wisdom there, Charlotte. Like, that is gonna, I think land really, I mean, I want to say softly, but it's actually jolted me. It just jolted my body into the possibility of a different motherhood for myself, not being a mother yet, and being in I suppose that transition. I'm potentially in this season of life where I'm sort of where I'm at my cycle now. I'm coming to very, very close to ovulation, and in life, very, very close to potential conception. And it's like, and the possibility that you're, sowing the seeds of a very different type of mother season, and just to know that is breathing space for it to be of service to myself as well as potential humans and potential projects, and just how it's tender, but it's also like it's breathing new life in a whole different sense. And so thank you so much for bringing that richness to that part.
Yeah, thank you for reflecting that, how that landed for you. And yeah, I just think, no matter who we are, what we do, whether we're full-time mums or working mums or part-time mums or not mums at all, I think I just wish that we could all have the space and freedom and no guilt and permission to just be without having to label, at that time of life, and just being enough as you are, whatever that looks like for you. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, just it's amazing once we can see the layers, like you were saying, on top of one another. And I think there's just two more life season phases to explore, like beyond the mother. And then we can sort of zoom out and then potentially move into the idea of having or living in a cyclical way, and then how business weaves into that. So, but I'd love to first continue the journey.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, cool. So, well, I think if you think that mother is ashamed or a an invitation to step into your power as a phase, then what comes next is even more so. I think, after menopause, it's the phase of life, the wild woman, the enchantress, the maga, as it's also known as well, which is a word that means magician in Sicilian, that's been taken on to as a name for this season of life. So this is post menopause to around the age of about 75. And it's because it used to be maiden mother crone, but now we live so much longer. We've had to kind of recognize and give space to this new season of life that we have post menopause, before real old age. And this is an age where women say that they feel like they become invisible, and they don't feel as worthy, like they don't have a purpose, and that they're not valued by culture. And there's so much power in this phase. I'm personally like looking forward to sitting in this energy myself when it comes. I think that workshop with Jane Hardwick Collins just made me kind of go like, fuck yes. I was just like, yeah, like this sounds just like such a badass time. It's like this time where, you're done with your reproductive years. You're like, the years of perimenopause have, work you essentially. The whole of your menstrual cycle, all of those years, they say they work you each cycle one by one. It refines you. It sheds, each cycle sheds a layer, a skin off you, so that you get closer and closer and closer to your truest self. Come menopause, and it's this rite of passage, this rebirth, like this ultimate final rebirth. If each of your previous rites of passages, which include your own birth, your own first bleed, your child, any children you give birth to, that childbirth is a rite of passage, like a physical rite of passage that you go through, and you are a new person, whether you can see that or not. And it's like this rebirth, you kind of can't go back, physically, energetically, spiritually. And so menopause being this time of like this final rebirth into your truth, and all the BS gets kind of stripped away, and you hear of it. I've heard it described as the veil of estrogen gets lifted when you have no more estrogen. You're not cycling anymore. Jane Hardwick Collins calls estrogen the hormone of, oh my gosh, what does she call it? I've forgotten the word, but it's basically like tolerance, like acceptance. Like you put up with stuff that actually doesn't sit well in your body, and when it lifts, there's no more tolerance. It's like your boundaries become a lot clearer. Your values, you're just not prepared to kind of put up with what doesn't feel good to you anymore. So it can be a time of incredible grief for a lot of women, of this ending of the cycling years, of the perception of youth, of fertility, which can be complex, but also this feeling of stepping into the shadows. But the reframe of this is that you're stepping into your power and your truest self, and using this badass queen energy for yourself, like taking it for yourself, but also kind of sharing it outwards in the world in a way that role models to others how we can do that for ourselves as well. So I know there's a whole lot more I could say about this, but yeah, essentially this is like Marga, enchantress, really working with this this kind of fierce energy. I think after about age 75, this is when nowadays we step into crone, which is the wise woman, the woman who's reached the end of her life, who has learned her lessons, who has seen it all, been there, done that, kind of seen it all, and sits there and maybe has family around her or community around her, and she speaks the wisdom and the truth and sees clearly and communicates that back. In ancient times, it was the crone woman who cultures would look to for decision making and guidance about how the village lived and what the community, where they hunted and moved, and answers to big life problems. The crone was so revered, and of course nowadays it's been, we don't respect our elderly, we don't value their wisdom. They are, on the whole, not all cultures, but a lot of like Western cultures just don't have that respect for this phase of life, and there's so much richness and wisdom in there, and we have so much to be grateful to those people in our life for. So yeah, looking at all of these 4 archetypes and aspects and parts of the female life cycle as well, layering them on, and crone would be like the winter, the bleed time, the darkness, the sort of inwards mystic time as well. So I hope that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. I think visually, like, there's definitely places that I can maybe pop a link in the show notes, or just to see the creation of that, whether it's a resource that Claire has shared with us, or I might make my own, but just to know that it's come from Jane Hardwick Collins and a wealth of knowledge, and then for you to have talked us through, I think it just notes that it's intricate. We are intricate beings, and the world and nature is intricate as well, and if ever there's a time, we sometimes have to simplify and communicate, but knowing that there's so much to explore there, and just to invite curiosity along someone's journey that is exploring this tapestry for the first time. And there's perhaps maybe one cycle that you can lean into first or more, and then continue on as it's been for you, like illuminating your menstrual cycle and that cyclical rhythm, but then also going, oh, actually there's also the moon cycle, and then how I can bring that in, and then it goes beyond, right? And then it's Pandora's box for cyclical dreams.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
yeah, And what I really love about it is that, you know, it sounds like a lot of information, but when you see it visually, it's, for me, what it gives us is this ability to, yeah, like you say, lift the lid and look within and identify what feels resonant for us and what doesn't, and just drawing these parallels, you know, just brings that depth of self-awareness and self-knowing. Also trust in ourselves that, you know, what you might be feeling, you know, we're just so taught to disembody, disassociate, not trust our intuition, our feelings. Whereas looking at things like this can be really revealing of like, well, you know, this is archetypal of this phase of life you're in, or this part of your cycle that you're in, or, you know, this wider season. And it just invites us to connect with ourselves in these ways that give us deep knowing, self-trust, and self-awareness, and like a mindfulness tool that's also embodied. Yeah. You know, so yeah, I just like freaking obsessed with it. Just love it. Just love it. Yeah.
A mindfulness tool that's embodied. Like, I love that summary of cyclical awareness or menstrual cycle awareness, and cycle awareness, as you know, you being a cycle coach and me training as one. I think like this wisdom to share, I mean, you can't help it once you get to know, to want to like sing it aloud and you know, involve as many people that are, you know, interested and curious. But it does bring such joy and bliss and ease and flow. And you know, you have a podcast yourself, Wild Flow, and that is it, you know, where it's wildly experimenting with the flow of life, how these rhythms can, you know, be incorporated or played with. And when you turn like up the volume on curiosity and turn down like inner critic, if possible, or negotiate with it, like Claire likes to say, negotiate with, you know, the inner critic. I don't have to ignore, push away, but just negotiate, but be over here in curiosity. And for me, that is always the invitation of living in a cyclical way, is a curiosity. Is there a question I could ask myself in my inner autumn, for example? That would be, you know, the time before I menstruate, I have experienced, you know, an anxiety around the bleed that's coming up, because I used to have really painful periods, and then it would be like me gearing myself up. Is the pain, oh, you know, like I would feel this anxiety. And so now, like, I know there's questions I can ask, and I can tend to myself in a way with curiosity, and with that recognition, the anxiety soothes, or is soothed by like my leaning in. Or yeah, I think, like you said before, that depth of awareness and deepening into a relationship with yourself first and foremost, then just ripples out into really nourishing ways into your life. It, like, you know, it adds up. Basically, we're zooming in on moments, or we're, you know, expanding on moments or experiences or emotions to then create a lifestyle of flow and of ease. You know, like it's like the micro to the macro of this rhythm. I would love to know, how do you incorporate lunar wisdom or menstrual cycle awareness into your business? And yeah, how does that look for you?
Oh, that's such a great question. Thank you for asking, because I think as women in business, there is such a tendency to feel like we have to do it all by ourselves. We have to be on all the time. The marketing gurus would tell us to be super consistent with, you know, our outputs and our, you know, social media and our creation, and, you know, would have us turn into content creators rather than just doing the good work we're here to do. So I think there's just, you know, and our culture is so driven by productivity and, you know, money making as a definition of success. And for me, it's like a daily rebellion against that, and refusing to be pushed into hustle culture, which is what we are. It's what's pushed on us. Like you said before, it's pushed on us from the moment we're born, and even before we're born. you know, how many births are, you know, not able to come when they're meant to come for whatever reason, but, you know, so to speak. You know, this go, go, go. It's honors from the moment we're born, one moment we're in this world. And, you know, the men around us are pressured into being providers, money earners and breadwinners. And so it's on them, and, you know, they feel it, it's what they know. And if you're in relationship with a man, you know, like if I'm married and, you know, I'm work by myself for myself, but, you know, he's around me a lot. And I hear from so many women how their partners are kind of expecting them in their business to create and earn money and to start, you know, taking over the world straight away, because that's what they know and that's what they expect. And they're like, well, if you're going to do this, then, you know, it's got to make some money and blah, 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 without valuing, you know, we buy into that. We can buy into that, and it can really affect our confidence, all the rest. So I take an absolutely cyclical approach to daily life, but definitely business as well. So the first thing is honoring the season of business you're in on a macro level. So, you know, I think it's really important, well, within all seasons and cycles, it's, you know, and in business, it's really important to remember the importance of rest, for one thing, of dreaming and visioning, of slowing, all of that winter phase energy, instead of just rushing headlong into the doing and the making and the being, and they're like being on the go all the time. And I think, you know, when you're wherever you are at in your business, you know, remembering that it's important to take stock, to give yourself the space to rest, to replenish your physical energy and your creative mental energy as well, but also to set the really strong foundations for your business, instead of feeling like I'm already meant to be making, you know, like X dollars and have this number clients, or whatever your business is, for example. So, you know, I really encourage people to trust in this process of starting off slowly, you know, but, you know, when I say slowly, I mean dreaming and visioning and, you know, setting intentions, or, you know, looking, just feeling into what it is you even want to do, so that it feels right, instead of just going for what you're told you should do or you think would work. Like, is it an embodied, like, yes, this is what I want to do with my business, or do next, or my next project is. So I have this thing called this idea of like the creative cauldron, I like to call it. So it works with the moon phases particularly, and it's very much about this. So honoring the full process of the cycle. So the cycle, all cycles essentially come back to birth, like growth, bloom, harvesting the fruit, decay, death, back round to rebirth, growth, bloom, harvest, decay, death. So it goes, all of whichever cycle you're looking at, all of these cycles we've mentioned, they all have the same pattern. So I love to work with this monthly with the moon, but you can absolutely work with this in your bleed as well, so your own menstrual cycle. So to avoid falling into hustle culture, overwhelm, burnout, and just like, you know, instead of doing all the things you should do, I like to take my creativity through this like creative cauldron process. So when I get to like the new moon, I like to have written down on different pieces of paper like all of my ideas, like everything that I want to do with work, all of the ideas, wild and wacky, whatever, put them all down, and I literally pop them in this little cauldron that I've got on my desk. It's like this little teeny tiny cauldron. So I pop them in there and I keep them there. And then a few days after, so this, you might do that process at the start of your bleed time, and then at the end of your bleed time, or a few days after the new moon, go back to your cauldron and start to look at your ideas and use the next few days or a time, or make a ritual out of it to pick out which one of these ideas you want to give space to this cycle. So either it's one that just feels right to you, that you've got the time for and the energy for, it feels like just most potent for you at that time, and keep that one and put everything else back in your cauldron. And then that's the one that I would use the waxing moon and the full moon, that kind of, or the first half of your cycle to work with, to create and pour my energy into that. And I would, still go about the day-to-day stuff, but in terms of like new projects, this would be the one that I'm working on, and I wouldn't look at anything else again until next new moon. What this does for me is it helps me to stop feeling like, holy crap, that to-do list is epic. How am I ever going to get around to all of these things? Just like pure overwhelm, or avoiding the temptation of burning out, which can happen in the first half of your cycle. When you feel like you've got all this energy and you just want to like go, 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 go. It's like, come back to this one thing, pour all your energy in and see it through to fruition. So if it's something short term, you might get it done, in a couple of weeks or so. Awesome. Otherwise, it might take multiple cycles, and you can keep taking it through your cycles. But come like autumn time, or the waning moon time, or your premenstrual time, that's like the time to take your foot off the gas and to stop going so hard in creative mode. It's a really good time to like be more refining, evaluating, reflecting, like what's working well and what's not working well. And it's kind of notice, like, so it's that check, quality control. It's like, how's it going? Do I want to keep working with this? Is this going where I want it to go? And then I would take it through my bleed and use that time to kind of vision again and dream about it, and be like, or the new moon phase, to kind of vision what I want to do with it, with the next cycle, if it's something that, is like a longer term project. So I find, there's people who say like, just bleed on it, which is, like just sleep on it. It's the same kind of thing, just checking in, as to whether this feels really aligned for you. Because we have that temptation, especially mid-cycle, to be like, yeah, to everything. So yeah, I find this process, and then if I get any other new ideas at any other point in the cycle, I just pop them down and might pop them into my cauldron, and I know that I'll come back to it. It's not lost, it's not forgotten, it's not gonna, have its time and place if it's right. And so that helps me be like really grounded in what I'm doing, where I'm using my energy, and not just killing myself trying to grow a business and serve all the people who want to work with me, and I want to work with them, and so yeah, that really works for me, just having this cyclical approach to business, so you don't kill yourself. Building it up.
It's amazing. And I love, just to illuminate it further, illuminate, because we're talking about the moon and all of the things, it's just like to zoom in on, and that rest, the invitation for rest, and that part of the cycle, whether whichever season you're in business, or different ideas can be in their season too. So there's like, you might be working on a really long project, and you're like, and that's in the autumn, but actually I can see this tiny little one that's in its spring, so I have to be, and so even giving, it's because I love cycles, so I'm going to give things their own individual cycle, of course. But
of course,
yeah, you don't have to be like Sophie right now. I'm just saying that there is that dynamic, but it can really translate to so much. But just to note that all of the seasons, to actually transition through all of them, and I love that creative cauldron idea, to give it the space, to give creativity, because business and creativity to me are like one and the same. I think business is just constant creativity adventure. Like what is business if not like constant creativity and play, and depending on what work you're in, but also I see everybody creating in their business, no matter what role they play, because you're dancing and co-creating with the universe, or co-creating with the people around you, or and definitely yourself. So just to know that there's that almost dedicated space for your creativity in your business is so cool. So that's something that I think is really lovely to take away, and a practical thing too that people could begin, like as of next moon cycle, next menstrual cycle, or whichever cycle they choose. So that just is such a lovely parting gift for us, Charlotte. Thank you for that, and thank you for this whole conversation. Like, how beautiful and how grounding it is to have your wisdom just weave together the richness of cycles, to really just pay attention to and give reverence to the constant presence that is, our cyclical nature, that is nature's cyclicality, like that is the dance which we're both leaning into, and that we invite others to join the journey and the wonder. When I was on a recent episode conversation with a beautiful mentor as well, Claire Foal, we weaved that image in of us all being in the woods, but we each have our own almost like little patch of flowers, and people might walk past and like show each other and just say like, oh, like this is what I'm playing with, and this is, but knowing that we're wandering down this path and having each other, and we're fanning the flame together. We're really like, I just love that visual, and I've talked about it, I think, with a few others as well, and that we're all around this fire, and we're all adding to it and breathing life into it for the message to be heard and to be felt and to be seen, and around as many ears and hearts and lives as possible. To lean into cyclical living is the invitation of ease and flow and abundance and manifesting, your desires. And I think I just feel really grateful that you've joined us on the podcast to take us through everything that you have in this episode. I think there's probably more episodes to come. Good job we both have our own podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I love that visual of all fanning the flames of the fire. And to me, it is like, it's this sacred remembering, but it is cultural change, but it's going back to what we knew before. But it's like it takes a movement.
And there's this reclamation, and we're both here for it, and I love being alongside you as we journey through it. So thank you so much for joining us. Before we go, can you point people to how they can connect with you and share space with you?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been such an honor. I've just loved all of it, and yay to like having the space to have this conversation, and to have others join this conversation too. So thank you. I'm on Instagram mostly, so it's at charlotte.puanto.coach, and the new podcast is called Wild Flow, and you can find that wherever you listen to podcasts. And also First Moon Circles is on Instagram. I think that's at First Moon Circles. I think that's all one word. So yeah,
I'll link everything in the show notes, so everyone can pop there and go straight to all of your incredible offerings. Thank you for all of the magic that you weave in this world. It really is so inspiring, and thank you for being on the
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you for everything that you do. It's just so beautiful to, your work in the world, and that you're doing this podcast, and such a joy to play with you in this space. So thank you. Thank you so much for listening in. If you're loving this podcast and you'd love to help me spread the wisdom shared, please leave a review or rating, or share this with somebody who you think would love to listen in. I'm really passionate about creating ripples of change and getting this information to more women, girls, and people with a cycle so that they can reclaim their cyclic natures too. And if you'd love to dive in deeper with learning more about how to connect with your cycle and rites of passages, come and join our free Wild Flow Circle community, or choose a course and learn with me on my online learning hub. All the links are in the show notes. And until next time, be well and go with the flow of your cyclic nature.